Hi everyone. So, in this little video, we are going to look at the greatest book ever written on ancient Egypt. And that book is none other than Horrible Histories, Awesome Egyptians. So, for anyone in the UK, I'm sure you're already aware of this book series. I'd kind of be shocked if you weren't. Firstly, if you live outside the UK, are you aware of this series? Because I genuinely would love to know. I don't know how far afield this book went outside of the UK. For those who don't know what it is, though, unsurprisingly given the way it looks, it's a series of books, and there's also a TV show for children, and it basically looks at various kind of like time periods and ancient civilizations. Well, historic civilizations, not necessarily ancient. So, for instance, you get the terrible Tudors, I think it's gorgeous Georgians, the vicious Vikings, and of course, my personal favourite, the awesome Egyptians. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to flip to a random page, and we're just going to see, what I think, if we can use it as a jumping off point or anything like that. Just see how accurate it is as well. Okay, so let's go. Oh. Okay. Actually, that's pretty good. Okay, so what we've got here, and hopefully I can get this into focus. Yep, okay. How to be a fairly wonderful Egyptian woman. Okay, I'm going to guess this probably does jump on a little bit from the page before, but it starts off by going, if being like Isis was too difficult, then you could be a fairly wonderful woman by, and then it lists 5 points. So I reckon we look over those 5 points and we just, we'll just use them as a jumping off point. Right, number 1. Staying at home and obeying your parents until you were 12 years old and old enough to marry. So yeah, we do see women getting married at 12 in ancient Egypt, but that wasn't necessarily 100% the case. Like, typically women, I think they were between kind of like 12 and 14 when they typically got married. But by the same token, like, you didn't have to get married in ancient Egypt. You could stay single if you wanted as well. So yeah, I suppose I kind of half agree with that. I think it's oversimplified. Okay, number 2. Marrying someone suitable, someone mum and dad approved of. Right. I think the problem with this point is most of the sources we have in ancient Egypt, unsurprisingly, are written from the perspective of the man. We need to bear in mind, like, I know there's some people out there who seem to assume that Egypt was this completely equal society between men and women. That's kind of nonsense. Don't get me wrong, it was better than other parts of the ancient world. I'd even say it's better than some kind of like modern countries as well. But it was far from equal. There was still plenty, it was still a patriarchal society. As such, yeah, we do see the dad needing to approve to the marriage quite a lot. We have absolutely no information on whether the mum got a say in this whatsoever. She may have done. We just don't know, because as far as I'm aware, there aren't really any sources that tell us one way or the other in that regard. Very often what you see is, there's different ways it could happen, but you might see, for instance, a man approaching the father of the woman he wanted to marry and asking for her hand. So kind of like you get in the West. We actually don't know if the dad had to say yes or no. They may have been able to go against the dad's back, but yeah, we just don't really have any evidence to say one way or the other with that. However, what we do also see is dads trying to arrange the marriage as well. It's actually interesting. So I'm just trying to think. There was, oh goodness, what was his name? I can't remember. That's so annoying. But there is a historian, not an Egyptologist, just a historian, who he pointed out that throughout history, not just in Egypt, but generally, for the most of history, marriage can be seen as a contract between two men. And what he meant by that was it's either a marriage between, say, the father of the potential bride and the father of the potential groom, or the father of the bride and the husband-to-be. For the majority of history, the woman didn't necessarily always get a say in the matter. I kind of do agree with that. It's a bit general, but as a principle, yeah, actually that does kind of fit. So what I'm going to say here, I think there's a lot we don't know about this area, but I would say this is kind of like partially true when it comes to the dad. When it comes to the mum approving of the potential husband, we've got no information on that. Okay. Number 3, obeying your husband. Yeah, sure. So like we said a second ago, Egypt was a patriarchal society. It would be normal for the man to be the head of the household. But I do think this does kind of... It's a bit deceptive because women, like I said a second ago, they had more rights than in other parts of the world. So, for instance, they were actually able to divorce their husband. They could also own property. They could own slaves, that kind of thing. So, yes, typically it would be the woman having to obey her husband, but that's oversimplified. I think that's probably the way of putting it. Women could go against their husband if they wanted, I guess. Okay, number 4. Sharing your husband with several other wives. I'm actually going to disagree with this. Yes, fair enough, when we're looking at the king, so the pharaoh, it was very common for them to have a harem. So, lots of wives. But actually, when we look at every stage of society underneath that, monogamy was by far the norm. In fact, when we look at the houses in ancient Egypt, they're normally set up, you can see from their very structure that they're set up for one man, one woman, and their children. That's not to say, polygamy didn't happen as well. Like, for instance, there's a text called the Tomb Robbery Papyri from the 20th dynasty. It's one I know quite well because I actually did part of my undergrad dissertation on it. But actually, this one, part of this document lists the houses in Dar el-Medina, which was the workman village for the people working on the royal tombs in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. And actually what we see in this document is, yes, we do see a couple of examples of, polyamorous relationships. In every case, it's one man living with a couple of wives. But the vast majority of the houses were monogamous relationships. They were one woman, one man, and their children. So, yeah, no, I mostly disagree with that one. Actually, almost entirely disagree with that one. Okay, number 5. Giving your husband lots of children, 6 or 7 was usual. Yeah, okay, I can agree with that. Yes, typically there were, families would have had a lot of children. So I can accept that. I think, again, it's a little bit oversimplified. Children were one of the main reasons for getting married, but they weren't the only one. I'd say that's more common when you're going down to sort of like the lower levels of society. I hate saying it that way because I think it's so horrible. But typically when you get to, say, like the elite, there were more reasons to get married outside of that. So, for instance, very often you see maybe someone getting married to someone in a neighbouring region of Egypt with the idea of broadening both families' area of influence as well. So, yes, it was common, but it wasn't the only reason to get married. So, we presented 5 points here. How many did I agree with? Number 1, staying at home and getting married when you're 12. I partially agree with, because typically women got married between 12 and 14. But by the same token, you didn't actually have to get married. Most people did, but it wasn't necessarily, vital. 2, marrying someone suitable, someone mum and dad liked. Okay, I kind of, again, sort of agree. Yes, it would be good to marry someone that your dad approved of. We've got no information at all about whether the mum had to agree. Number 3, obeying your husband. Again, I'm going to say I do agree with that one in terms of the ancient Egyptian perception. But again, it is oversimplified. Women could divorce their husbands, they could own property, they could own slaves. They weren't completely and utterly helpless, but certainly being outside of a marriage would be disadvantageous. Disadvantageous? Is that a real word? Yeah, sure. Anyway, for sharing your husband with several other wives. I disagree with that. I think that's true when it comes to the royal family, when it comes to the pharaoh specifically, but actually for the majority of Egyptian society, that wasn't the case. We see a couple of examples of polyamorous relationships, but it was far from the norm. Giving your husband lots of children, 6 or 7, I'm going to say I do agree with that, but again, it's oversimplified. There were other reasons to get married, such as broadening your influence in Egypt, especially when you get to like the elite levels. So overall, what would I say? I'd say it's not particularly accurate. It's not awful, and I think it's okay, but it's not great. We'll put it that way. However, when it does come to this book series, one thing I will say is I actually love this book series. I think more importantly when it comes to this one is it's a really good jumping off point for children who want to get into history. I know for a fact for myself, it was a big part of my childhood, actually, this book series, and I do attribute it in part to the reason I got into history to begin with. It's not the only reason. There were other reasons as well. So, for instance, I bring up my history teacher, Mrs. Tingley, who I think was fantastic. I think, there's a lot of reasons I got into history, but this definitely did help in the long run. So, yeah, I love this book series. I would recommend it, especially if you've got kids. But, yeah, it's not exactly 100% accurate. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little video. I don't know how this is going to come out, to be honest, because I've kind of just free-willed this, to be honest. But, yeah, please do let me know what you think in the comments below. And I'm going to end it here. So, thanks for watching, and see you later.